for a while.
Right on, right on. Well, it looks like we're rolling up on 2 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and let's see, we got a few people coming in into the group. So I'll go ahead and make the introductions. Looks
Sweet.
like we have Michael Cioni here from Frame.io. He is here today to show us a sneak peek into the innards of camera to cloud, which I'm super excited about because I see it as the future, and you guys will too after we roll through this. We got Dominic here from Northwest Camera Co. And then my name's Guy. I have Guy Cochran. I have a local reseller establishment in Everett, Washington called DVE Store. And behind the scenes, we have Vera. You can't see her on screen, but the infamous Vera will be helping cut the show, so she'll be spotlighting. And we're glad to be able to present this in 1080p and hope that we can do more things like this for Northwest Production Hub as we grow the group. So without further ado, Michael, you want to go ahead and kick things off?
Thank you, Guy. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or wherever you are in the world. Maybe it's an early morning. I don't know. Or you're watching this after. We're happy to have you here. And I am very privileged to be here with Dominic and Guy and Vera and to talk about camera to cloud. And one of the things that this is really important to kind of get our mindset is that over the next 10 years, everything is going to be a virtual transmission. Over the next 10 years, you're going to see everything that is an appliance that records locally transmit to the cloud. Now, think about that. That means in 10 years, or over the next 10 years, but in 10 years, a magazine that comes out of a card, a compact flash or CFast or SD or whatever it is, that's going to be as unfamiliar on a set as a DV cam tape, or a HD cam tape, or even a DAT tape or a DA88 tape. Those types of things seem very strange. Why would someone bring a tape to a set? Today, that sounds weird, but 10 years ago, it was actually pretty common, right? And so the story is going to be this transition phase, like we did from film to tape and tape to files. And if I share my screen here, we'll talk a little bit about that, because it's all about like setting up a little bit of history here. Like we all remember we had a film for 100 years, but then we went to digital, and digital was a tape-based solution, and movies like Collateral were some of these early adopters of videotape. That was shot on the Thompson Viper with a little bit of 35, but that was one of these big Hollywood releases that was an early videotape using an early log format called film stream. And then you've got file-based projects like Benjamin Button, or in this case, the Still Here from Zodiac. Those were early file-based. That was a Viper to a codex, an S2 recording system. And so this is sort of where we're going through a new precipice in change. But if you remember film to tape, tape to files, there's always this transition period. There's skeptics, there's early adopters, there's people who love it, there's people who hate it, there's everybody in between. And so this is where we all get to decide, where do we fit in this? But this is just what I want to tell this group watching. By the year 2031, it will absolutely be all to the cloud. It's not going to be like conjecture where people said, well, maybe we'll hold out and stay on tape a little bit longer. Well, they can hold on to it longer, but eventually it's going to go. And so this is where it's important to kind of get interested in understanding the challenges facing us to go to a completely virtualized production world. Now, why are we doing this? Well, a lot of it has to do with not just pure speed or simplicity or maybe even efficiency. It's really about collaboration. If you think about what we're talking about here, you hear this phrase, the last mile. It's always the hardest to do the last mile. Well, we don't have a last mile problem. Using the internet in post and exhibition and distribution, that's easy. We're getting the last mile with the internet. When you watch Netflix tonight and you see a 4K HDR file at home, that's the last mile, working great with the internet. It's the first mile that is the hurdle. And so that's what we really try to attack at Frame.io. And so I joined Frame.io. Again, my name is Michael Cioni. I joined about 18 months ago. And Emery Wells, the CEO and co-founder with John Traver, they really built an amazing acquisition platform and sharing platform. And so Frame.io is a creative collaboration platform. It's actually the most popular creative collaboration tool in the world. There's almost 1.5 million users on the platform. And what we want to do with Camera to Cloud is get to that first mile. And when you look at this, you always are going to have your picture and sound, and you're going to have these other elements here. But what Camera to Cloud does is it's going to avoid the shipping and the transfer and the backup to get started. You still need to ship and backup and transfer and checksum. But today, without Camera to Cloud, you can't get started doing anything until those processes happen. With Camera to Cloud, you can start editing or send it to a lab while you're still downloading and shipping on the set. So the picture sort of changes here. Once you rearrange the world this way, these elements on the left become a parallel process. Shooting picture and sound, and then editing and reviewing and collaborating or transcribing or watching dailies or whatever you want to do, that can now be a parallel process. And then the shipping and transfer, shuttling and backup and archive, those can be a secondary process. You don't have to wait for those as barriers to get going creatively. That's ultimately what Camera to Cloud does. It's the first step in eliminating the drive barrier. Because that's another thing. I imagine everybody watching here has a closet or a shelf of hard drives, and you've got them for 10 years or more, and they're sitting on a shelf. You don't know which power supply goes to which. You haven't turned these drives on in many years, and you're not going to delete them. You're not going to get rid of them. They're just sitting there, right? We can't keep doing that. This world of like orphan drives that sit on desks and shelves and closets and stuff like that, that's going to go away, because we really don't want those. We want one drive in the sky, one drive that is uber alles, right? And that's essentially an overall drive that covers the gamut. That's really what we want. And that's what we're talking about Camera to Cloud, is starting getting the access of our acquisition process to the cloud so that we can start leaning on the cloud and living in the cloud more and more until we don't have hard drives locally anywhere. So how do we do that? Well, we're doing this with proxy files. So we're capturing a proxy because that's the only way to make this work today, because bandwidth in the world is not high enough to be able to transmit raw files to the cloud. Plus, cameras do not have a raw file output port yet, right? They haven't really thought of that. How do they capture raw files? Through magazines, through media, right? That's how they capture OCF, original camera files. But that's going to change. Over the next several camera cycles, you'll see camera manufacturers start to put OCF transmissions and maybe even modems inside cameras, or certainly hotspots, the ability for the camera to be online itself and have a port directly from the media to the cloud. Now, you might say, oh, my camera can be online right now. Well, your camera may be online in terms of its brain, but its footage is not online, right? You can connect to a camera and control it, or you can connect to sound and control it, but the asset, the hero asset, the raw file, that's not something you can extrapolate through some sort of modem port or some sort of data port. You basically capture it locally to a drive and you transfer it. What we're trying to do is break that wall down, and the first way to do that is with proxies. We also will have live streaming coming later this year. So if you want to be doing this proxy mode and also see a live stream, that's great. Live streams are awesome. Like, there's a lot of usefulness to live streams, but here's where they break down. An editor can't really do anything with live stream because there's no time code, there's no file name, and there's really no sense of where it is. And there's a lot of nothing being transmitted in between important shots. So live streams can be great, but really we're after proxy files because we want time-coded proxy files that represent a version of the OCF so that you can actually get creatively working. So we're going to add live streaming second into the platform, into our solutions later in this year. But today there's probably 30 solutions you probably know about that you can do live streaming. Just keep using those. But you can't name any solutions out there that have proxy capture and delivery with time code and file name and automation. That's what we've invented. And then we're really big on security. Dominic and I were talking just before we went live, and we were talking about security and TPN, Trusted Partners Network, and SOC 2 Type 2 security. These are the ways to make sure that we have been awarded the badges by third-party groups so that if your assets are in Frame.io, you can tell your clients they're safe and they've been approved by third-party trusted partners. And that helps us maintain security across the platform. So how are we doing this? Well, we are trying to build an ecosystem. And if you know other manufacturers that make appliances, or you are a manufacturer that makes appliances, we want to hear from you, because this list right here is not our design for the whole ecosystem. This is the beginning. Today we have Teradek as our video partner for the proxy files, Sound Devices as our audio partner for the proxy files, and then Colorfront as our partner for dailies and post-production lab dailies. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is the start. And this was about several years of work to try to make this process work. And after several years of working together, we've been able to make this actually happen. And we'll go a little bit deeper to it in a second. Teradek makes several products. They have a whole fleet of products. You all know them. The 655 is required for proxy mode. Now, a lot of people say, but what about 755? When's that firmware update coming? The answer is never, because the 755 is a streaming device, and it is optimized using a different FPGA hardware architecture, and it does not allow a cloud proxy capture transmission solution. So if you're waiting for the 755 firmware, you're gonna be disappointed because it's not coming. There's nothing wrong with the 755. It's a great tool, but it does a different function than the 655, which has more support for proxy recording. In the 655, we could capture high quality, low bandwidth H.264 files. What you can do is scale that bandwidth to whatever bandwidth you have. So most people do about 3 to 4 megabits per second files. Those look great. Certainly editable. Some people go lower, 1 to 2 megabits if they have low network in the places they're shooting. And some people go as high as 10. It can go up to 15. 15 is going to look not exactly like a ProRes, but it's going to get into the ProRes looking realm. It looks really good at 15. And you might be fine with 7 or 8 if you're looking for really high quality files. You might be fine with 3. I shoot at 3. What you'll see today is 3. That's what I use all the time. And I'm shooting and editing this stuff every day at 3 megs. And I don't get complaints for rough cuts. Obviously, that's not DI worthy material by a large stretch, but it'll get you cooking. And then this is designed to work over 4G and 5G and Wi-Fi. So it's really flexible. In sound devices, I really want to highlight how interesting and exceptional this is with sound devices. This is the first field audio recording system that does have an ability to capture files, route them, and transmit them to the cloud. So you get an exact copy of what is on your sound devices in the cloud. What that means is you don't have to use a proxy with sound devices. You can. Proxy files in the audio world, we would call those AAC files. You can set your bit rate for those, but you can also capture the uncompressed broadcast wave file. Linear PCM audio, 8 channels of sound can be transmitted to the cloud. So you have the option to do really high quality hero media, an exact archive. This is where we're going to see the audio community, I predict, go to the cloud first, because everything in technology tends to happen to sound before picture, because sound files are smaller. So original sound files are going to be smaller than original raw camera files. And so we're going to see a migration to cloud virtualization and audio happen sooner. That'll become an industry standard 5 years before it becomes an industry standard for picture, because picture files are so big. So that's an interesting thing. Today, you can already, and I'm going to demonstrate it in a moment, we can send broadcast wave to the cloud virtually instantly, but you can also use AAC as an option, which is really, really cool.
So Michael, on that note, when do you predict that we'll start to see some of the other camera manufacturers start to pick up this metadata that we can transmit on a sub $15,000 camera? Is there anything that is on the horizon?
Well, I have a lot of NDAs in my inbox, but what I can tell you is everybody's getting the message. So the good news is there's virtually no company that we haven't spoken to that is saying, I don't think this is the way we should go. That's really rare, because you have a unified market where everybody's innovating the same way. That's good for consumers, right? That's always good for consumers. But what you can do, you have a say in this, because you can call your senator representative from your favorite camera company, and you can call them and be like, hey, we want Frame.io in the camera, right? You can ask for that, because right now that's what they have to start engineering. And as you know, Guy, camera manufacturing timelines and roadmaps are longer than audio manufacturing timeline and roadmaps, because they're simply more complex machines. So we'll see audio companies jump onto this with native audio uploads sooner than camera companies. Plus, camera companies have a harder lift, because if they put a modem in a camera, it reclassifies what that device is for like shipping and immigration and things like that, right? You can't just have a camera with a modem in it. That changes what it is for basically when things go over borders of countries. So that's another thing that the camera companies have never had to really deal with that before, unless they were a broadcast camera, which is sort of a different community, right? So there's some new things there. I guess I'm not trying to dodge a subject. I'm trying to tell you that it's going to take at least 2 years. It's going to take 2 years, probably. I would say 1 year, 18 months would be the fastest that someone could start integrating this into a camera directly, but it's not impossible, right? So these roadmaps are several years long. You notice when you look at your favorite camera manufacturers, some manufacturers can release a camera every year in the same model. Some take 3 years, some take 5 years. It's different rhythms. Now, some companies have 5 different cameras and they lease a different one each year. So it feels like they have a camera every year, but they really only have one every 2 or 3 years, and they have different cameras. You know, Sony's a great example. There's always something new coming from Sony, but there's a lot of differentiation. So we need all these cameras to jump on board to the cloud.
Did I see that number right in your previous presentation with Emery, where it said Frame.io now has 1 million users?
We have over, I think it's 1.5. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, the pool, I just see this as the future, because already that weight to the industry is shifting. And even internally in our small company, we've used it, especially now with the work from home stuff. So I'm excited to see this get into where Dominic's at in more the higher levels, because Dominic gets to play with all the big cameras. I mean, Dominic, which cameras do you see this coming to first in your world?
No, I don't really know. I mean, if you start adding things like modems, you know, I feel like everyone is tending to go smaller on the camera, but the more things you start adding, the bigger they go. So I'm sure as a camera manufacturer, there's got to be a delicate balance between new technology and size, because, you know, the smaller cameras are selling like hotcakes. The bigger ones are starting to sit a little bit longer. So, you know, I'm really interested to see, you know, anything that comes out from like, you know, Red, Arri, Canon, Sony, any sort of integration from them. I mean, they're already, you know, industry standards for, you know, multiple parts of video production. So yeah, anything that can come from them, I think is going to be very exciting as we move forward. That'll be really, really cool. And Michael, I had a question about the sound devices. So as soon as I saw this presentation, I actually went out and bought an 8 series recorder myself, because I think this is insanely cool. It helps me as a sound person get out even quicker in the day. But with this, what is the hardware to go, you know, with the video, you have the Teradek, which is how you get things up. But with the sound devices, what is the hardware requirements and the process to go to the cloud from this? I assume there's no Teradek involved with that, right?
Correct. Yeah, with sound devices, it is the device. That's the beauty. That's what I was saying. Sound devices is really unique because they're a step ahead. Again, audio has that advantage. The device itself is the recorder and the uploader all in one. So it has those benefits. Now, we were talking about putting modems in cameras. Let me just stop sharing my screen so I'm bigger. I don't know if I need to do that or Vera's going to do that, but just to be clear, this is a modem, right? This is a hotspot. This is called a Nighthawk from Netgear. And this has external antennas. I could put really huge amplifying antennas on here. And this has a SIM card in it. I'm using a Telna SIM card that's tied to AT&T, for example. This can simply be connected wirelessly or over Ethernet. I like this model because it's tiny. It has a battery. It charges over USB-C. Oh, I should do this. It charges over USB-C, and it has Ethernet in it. And then this is where the ports are for the antennas if you want to do that. And so it's a really nice flat solution that you can put in your audio bag and just upload all day long directly from this little guy right here. So that's a clean, easy way to work. So the beauty of that is that you don't actually have to put the modem in the sound devices or in the camera. What we have to do is have a way to pull, manufacturers have to give us a way to pull the asset and push it through a device like this. So you're right about putting more in the camera makes it bigger, and nobody wants that. So as long as the camera can push the file out over Wi-Fi, then it can be use the modem to connect to the internet this way. So you see what I'm saying? So you don't have to put a modem in a camera, though some people will. You could hop it to a hotspot like this. But today, cameras can't push a proxy out of themselves. They don't really do that. You can send video over like a bolt, but that's not the proxy. That's why we're using a Teradek cube, because we have to create a proxy, because the camera doesn't do that and transmit it. Do you follow?
Yep.
So that's
during that process, the Teradek's going to store it locally at 3 megabits onto its little SD card, and then as convenient, or when the take ends, it starts its upload process.
That's exactly right. And we'll show a demo exactly now. And so both the Teradek and the sound devices have local storage. They store it. So if you're offline or you have weak internet, you're fine. And then once the network gets healthy or it shows up, it publishes those files. Usually you're online when you're shooting. If that's the case, it'll just publish all day long. I had a movie shooting in February in Mississippi. A lot of their shoot days were in swamps where there was zero cell service. They just shot. And when they took the cube home, the DP would say they would take the cube to a hotel where they were staying. And when they would get to the hotel, it would just publish everything, and they'd still watch everything that same day, even just with hotel internet. So that is sort of the behavior where you can even be offline and still have a successful camera to cloud workflow.
So who do you think in the industry is going to be impacted the most by this workflow? Is it the people that used to have to wait for the dailies? And I mean, where do you see the speed up happening the most, where people are like, my life just changed. Like, I get this stuff, not FedEx. I don't have to worry about, all this other stuff. Who do you see impacted the most?
It's a really great question. And the answer is we're still discovering new ways people are discovering how this can work. Like, think about when people started shooting on digital cameras. It wasn't like it just changed and that was it. Like, people use digital cameras differently. You now shoot differently. It changed everything about photography, what is possible, right? And it changed everything about high speed and even like slow-mo and even time lapse. And it changed everything about how, even like think of DI or Photoshop. It didn't just change photo developing, it changed everything. So camera to cloud will change everything. And I'll give you just one random example that we never thought of. A lot of people in the nonfiction space record, long interviews, an hour-long interview. And what one group that does professional, high-quality documentaries, they told us that when they use camera to cloud, this was for, I think, some NASA interviews for some documentary. They said, normally we shoot it, we download it, we take that file, we FedEx it, because that interview is wherever it is. It FedEx to LA, then it goes to a lab. The lab downloads it, backs it up, transcodes it to Avid. Then it gets shipped to the editing room. They take that file, then they retranscode it and publish it to the cloud, and then they send it for transcription. What they told us is that was between 3 and 4 days, depending on where in the world the shoot was. And now Camera to Cloud allowed them to send things to the transcription company while the crew was still wrapping. It was already there.
Wow.
And Frame.io has an integration with a transcription company called Rev.com. So you can actually have Camera to Cloud, deliver to Frame.io, and just share it to Rev.com. And the transcription's just happening. And a lot of people need paper edits before the cutting room gets going. And if you're one of those people, this is a time saver of epic proportions. And that's just one example that we, of course, never designed Camera to Cloud to do. But it ended up, the client figured out how it would make their world better, because they obviously know their pain points. So that's what we're looking for, guys. People that are deploying it, they're going to discover how to use it and then give us feedback how to make that experience better.
That's awesome. And I want to let people know that are watching on Facebook or in the Production Hub or in the Zoom to go ahead and feel free to use the Q&A to ask questions, because I know some of you are curious like me, and we want you guys to drive this show and be able to feel like you're a part of it. So it's not just Michael doing a flat out PowerPoint and trying to jam to the end. We want to let you guys know that you're here to help us get relevant information too, because I'd imagine that things have changed even just in a few weeks since, like you said, it's evolving, and you don't know what people are going to think of how to use this technology. So, and then Dominic, I know you got the 833. I think it's just the 888 and the Scorpio that's going to utilize the Ethernet to pump out, because the 833 does not have the Ethernet from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens there. I've reached out to Sound Devices, and they seem hopeful that if enough people make a recommendation, it sounds like there might be something that can be done while nothing currently exists. It sounds like there might be a possibility, which would be really awesome if it was to happen. It's a great mixer. For stuff here in Seattle, that's like the perfect size for like so many jobs. 6 inputs is great for so much stuff. I feel like if you're on a dock, you know, the 888 or a Scorpion, like it's just a really big thing to lug around, whereas that 833 is just like so small and so portable. I feel like if it can come to that, it'll be great.
Yeah. So now that we're talking so much about that, we should probably do some authentication. And I have everything set up here, and I want to show everyone this so that we can kind of set this up. Let me get this looking good. So hopefully that looks good to everyone. Maybe I could get this a little bit sharper there. Okay. If I stop down a little, I'm losing my light outside. The sun's going down. So yeah. I'm having to
Dominic, bring in the big lights for him. Come on.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I know what I can do. Let me do this. Let's do this. And then we'll do that. And then we'll get a little bit more depth of field. Okay. So what we've got here is obviously this is an 888 that we were just talking about. And then I've got a cube on it. So I'm going to do the cube first. And this is what's really fun about this process, is being able to kind of see how these devices work together. So you can see the cube, it's just getting an SDI input. So there's my SDI going right into the cube. And this would work with most SDI cameras. The objective today is that it's not camera specific. But it does require an SDI camera, Sony, Panasonic, Red, Arri, and Canon. Now, not every manufacturer has the same specs in their SDI, so there are some limitations, and on our website we have some of that, the limitations. But today I have a Red Helium and a cube hooked up to it, and I can transmit this over a Bolt wirelessly. If you're using a Bolt XT, the cube can receive the Bolt XT signal wirelessly, so you don't have to have the bolt hardlined, and you do not have to put the bolt on the camera. If you do, that's fine, that works great. But if you want it somewhere else with a DIT, and let's say your DIT is adding looks, they might want to put the looks past the looks into the bolt so that the images in Frame.io look the way the DIT wanted. So this is still a DIT friendly workflow because you can put the cube downstream of the DIT, and that's how you get everything to look right in Frame. So it says, please sync with Frame.io. So I'm going to press the plunger and it's going to say sync with Frame.io. So I go to recording, and in recording, there's a button that says Frame.io. So as soon as I choose that button, I have an option to pair. Now you're going to see this, and for a moment, your brain's going to think that this device and my phone, which is going to be used to pair it, have to be this close together. This is happening through the cloud. So the person who's authenticating the appliance does not have to be anywhere near the set. In fact, they don't even need a Frame.io account on the appliance side. So you could have a crew just read the code that we're about to see, and the admin of the account can just type it in. So it's super secure because crew members do not have to have Frame.io accounts. If you don't want to give them accounts, it's not required at all. And you don't have to be in the same time zone for this to work. I know that's a little deceptive because it looks like this is all happening very closely, but it doesn't have to. So when I hit pair, it says, it gives me a code. So in Frame.io, you see a button here, it says cloud devices. When I see cloud devices, it says, oh, there's nothing here. Let's set up a device. So I hit set up device, and I'm going to say ready to connect, and I get the code. So the code I'm seeing is 824. 755. This code will change every 120 seconds. So the door to do this process is only available for 120 seconds. So now I can see I have a cube. It's going through my account, and it's actually telling me where the project is going. So the user, whether you're on the set or somewhere else, you can see the serial number of the device, the type of device, your user, and the place you're going to put these files. So I'm going to hit authorize, and watch on the cube, we get a success notification. And now it's checking with Frame.io, and look at the cube gives the user feedback. Oh, the user's Michael Cioni. The project is C2C. So the authentication process is going to the cube to tell the user everything's good. And now I can hit finish. And once I hit finish, I've got the cube set up here. And now one trick I can do when I'm on the home screen of the cube, I can push the toggle down twice, and now there's a new home stream for Frame.io. That's sticky. So once it's here, it'll stay here, and this will show you the status of your clips in Frame.io at all times on the cube. So that's, I can see I have a video signal, I'm on the cloud, and then I have a wireless network connection. So everything's ready to go. In Frame.io, I can see I have my cube, and I have a little 3-dot menu here, and there's some settings in here. One of the settings is rename the device. So I could change, let's say I was going to call this A camera. I could do that. So I'll call it A camera. And so you could have 5 cameras, A, B, C, D, E, right? And then I could click on the 3-dot menu. I could also set device expiration. If you were renting a cube from a third-party group, sort of like magazines you rent from camera companies, you know, sometimes people forget to delete them, and you get the camera and somebody's footage is on it. You're not going to back that up. One way to safeguard that from happening here is I could set a date and say, I want this cube to expire next Friday. And I can set that date, and the cube will automatically deauthorize itself based on a calendar. So it's now stapling into the cube when the cube should deactivate from that account. So it could be rented again. And it's just another level of security that the account owner can feel like they have control over that cube, even if they don't own it. And then lastly, you have a button here that says pause devices. If I were to pause it, it means that it will stop the cube from publishing anything. So if you have sensitive material for whatever reason, the admin can actually pause all the devices remotely and then resume them remotely. So it's another level of security. You can pause individual devices, or you can pause all devices. So now we don't want our sound to get lonely, right? That's no fun. So let's look at our 888. So if I go into the 888 menu, I can scroll down and I see a button. Actually, I'm going to go into this record play menu first. This is pretty fun. If you don't know this, this is one of the good reasons why the sound devices people are really good. Here I could go to track routing. Now I have 3 slots and 3 ways to record on an 888. So I can record to the internal SSD or an SD1 or an SD2 card. In here, I could change what I'm recording to what. So in my SD1 card, it's set to the orange left and right. You can see the orange in the bottom right says AAC. So this is an AAC file. But if I wanted to set my SD1 to WAV, I could do that, right? So now it's blue. So I can either choose what I want to record where. So one of the reasons that's nice is I could say, let's record our hero files to the internal SSD. And if I was having low bandwidth on the set, or I didn't really have high bandwidth, or I just wanted to send a stereo mix, I could send my my SD card to just be an AAC stereo mix. And I can change the quality of that AAC down here up to 256. So that's a really high quality AAC. It would sound like an iTunes audio file. It's pretty high quality, but it's small, right? What I'm going to do for today is I'm going to set this to WAV. So I'm now putting this to polyphonic. You can see down here, it's set to broadcast WAV file, and that's my SD card. So that's my routing, but you have a lot of flexibility there depending on your network. Now I'm going to go back to files, and in the files menu, you see there's a menu called Frame.io, and it says not connected. When I click on Frame.io, I can see here which drive do I want to mirror. And this is where we're now talking to that router we were just in. Do I want Frame.io to mirror my internal hard drive, my SD1 or my SD2? This is pretty nifty that you can decide as the user where you want the files to come from that are being published to the cloud. So you get a lot of control over there. Additional control is in your upload mode. Do you want your upload mode to be automatic, so anything that goes to the drive you're mirroring goes up? Or do you want to do it as a manual, that you want to push them up on your own manually? Or do you just want to pause the device on the sender side? So remember, you could pause it here in the receiver side, but you could also have a mixer has control to pause it on the sender side. So there's a lot of control about this, because mixers may want to pause things and rename files, or maybe they want to change something before it's published. If they want to do that, they can absolutely have that control here. I'm going to set this to automatic because that's the most likely scenario of this stuff. And remember, we're mirroring SD1, which is a WAV file. So this is a uncompressed broadcast WAV file. So now I'm going to hit connect. And when I choose connect, it's going to give me another 3-digit code. So here we go in Frame.io. I'm going to hit add new device. And the code here is 431635. I'm doing all this sideways, so I apologize. I have to wrap my head around. Okay, so now we're going that. Now look at here. We have a Sound Devices logo, so it knows the device, it knows the user, and it tells me the account that it's going to. Once I hit authorize, Sound Devices is going to get a ping, and when that ping is done, we get a successful connection. I could hit OK here, and now this is where I can either set a device expiration if I wanted, or I can just hit finish, and I have the ability to upload or change the name or set an expiration date, whatever I want. So as I add more devices, this list will just grow and grow and grow. You can add as many cloud devices as you want. And Guy, when you're thinking about weird combos, here's a weird combo. You could have 2 shoots at the same time, being in 2 locations, publishing to the same directory. That's new, right? Imagine second unit, or imagine 2 people doing imagine someone doing an interview with 2 people and those people are not in the same room. That could all go to the same place now. So it's really centralized in a kind of a wacky way. It introduces combos that we never thought of before, which is pretty cool. So now that we've got all this, I guess we should just shut up and roll a take. So what I'm going to do is let me share my screen, and we'll do this on my phone first, and then we'll shoot some takes over to different ways that we talked about, Guy and Dominic. So we'll stay on my phone first. So Vera, you can stay with me for this first part. So I'm going to hit record on the camera and hit record on the sound devices. You can see there's a record being enabled right here. There's a record there. There's a microphone. Tap, tap. Checking 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to cut picture and cut sound. And watch what happens on the cube. The cube is going to give us an upload indicator light, and it's going to show us the percentage of upload as it goes. There, it's done. And then you can see the sound devices was actually doing the same, and it's done. So those files are both done. So if I go to my media tab, I can go into cloud devices, and I see all the dates of what's being shot. So here's the 25th, and I see I have a video file, and inside the video file is a camera. There's the video clip that we just shot, and I can click on that clip and play it back. On sound devices, you can see there's a record being enabled right here. There's a record there. There's a microphone. Tap, tap. Checking 1, 2, 3. That was that. That was the scratch track from the camera. If I go back to my audio file, I can click on audio, and now I can play the audio file. And hit record on sound devices. You can see there's a record being enabled right here. So that audio sounds better. And now here, if we look at, if I hit a refresh, if we look at this other folder, it says AV Sync. This is a new beta that we're in right now. AV Sync is in beta. AV Sync is a way in which we're now taking time code and we're syncing it together. And so I think I'm going to do another take to kind of demonstrate that. So let me grab my slate. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit record on picture and sound. I'm going to hold my slate up here and kind of get a shot of that. And we can, I'll have to stop down a little bit. Here's the time code 14, 35, 18, 19, 20. And then I'm going to whack it. All right, now I'm going to cut my video and cut my sound so we could see that time code to kind of demonstrate the next level of integration here. So let's zoom into the phone. Everything's backwards for me today. All right, here we go. We got a nice shot there. So I'm going to hit refresh. And now we can see there's more assets going to the cloud. So if I go in here, I've got an asset uploading for the new take that I just shot. And if I go to audio, we'll have 2 assets in there. So now there's 2 assets, and then AV Sync is going to show 2 assets as well. So let's go to our video file. Let's click in here. We'll click on that. And this is going to be really tiny. Hopefully you can see it. I'm going to zoom in all the way, but you can see the time code in the bottom left. I'm going to hold my slate up here and kind of get a, and you can see the time code matches. Stop down a bit. Here's the time code 14, 35, 18, 19, and then I'm going to whack it. So this way we have actual time code parity. And if you look at the file name, we have the file name of the red file. So this is the camera raw file name, and it's the camera raw time code. So this is a proxy file that can match back to the raw file that's obviously still inside the camera. When we take those and we go back to AV Sync, it will allow us to, now it's going to take the metadata from the audio file. So remember, the audio is named scene and take, right? So I call this 12 take 1 and then 12 take 2. And then the video file is named the red file name. So it's AC something, I don't know, AC something. It's a C10. C9 and C10. So now what I can do is go to AV Sync, and what we're doing in Frame.io, which is the first cloud automated syncing solution, we're taking the picture and sound. Because the time code's jammed, it will automatically staple the audio to the video, and then it will rename the video file the scene and take. So you have a directory that is scene and take named. Slate up here and kind of get a shot of that. And so now that's the good audio stapled to the picture, and it has the scene and take, so that you could search in this AV Sync directory by scene and take, because you know how hard it is to search by camera name. That's useless. But if you knew you were shooting scene 12, you could just search 12 and it would find everything 12. A director and a DP, art department, they all work by scenes. And so this is an opportunity to really automate the process by renaming the synced files scene and take.
How much metadata do we have at this point in time that gets transferred up?
Quite a bit. If we actually go, let's do another take, except this time I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at Frame.io. Actually, we should share your screen, Guy. What am I doing? Let's go to Guy's screen. Can we share, sure. Or Dominic, whoever wants to share? We want to take a look at Frame.io. So let's pin.
Okay, so you're looking now at my screen. Great. And
so Guy, let's back up a directory. Let's go to, no, you're at the very top there. Click on the date. There you go. That'll work fine. And once that loads, we'll go back into the upper left date. And I just want to show the people, click inside a video. And inside of that, one more, and then click on one of the assets. And then if you click on one of those assets, it'll drop for you. Go ahead. In the upper right, you can see the metadata. If you hit that show more button, it'll show you all the things we're capturing. Yeah, right there. And so we're capturing a lot of metadata from the camera. We're getting some decent metadata. It's not everything in the world, but we're getting a lot of material here. And then we're doing the same in the audio. So if you go back, Guy, to the AV Sync file.
This one here?
No, you have to go back another couple directories. So you can click on the date there. Yep. And then go to AV Sync and click inside either one of those. And the same metadata in the right is going to show you now we've got the video file name asset and the audio file name asset, because that's a muxed metadata coming together to create a new asset, right? So you can kind of see them up there. And then the audio file has its metadata as well. So all of these share metadata across the way. Yeah, so now you're going to make a note. Very good. So which asset is that? That's 12/8 take 2. Was that in sync? Yeah. So I don't know if it's possible, but if Vera goes back to my screen now, this is cool because Guy is doing an actual demonstration of how to use this collaboratively. And then if you're able to see on my screen, I can actually see Guy's notes, and I can already see what Guy's doing. So he says, this is rad. And so we're already seeing that. He's typing new things. As soon as he finishes this note, we'll see it appear in my phone. There is Guy's new note, and you can see the drawing that he just made is published on my phone. So I can go in and see that. I can see his note. I could reply, and I could give him a thumbs up. And so Guy and I can have a conversation, you know, cool, right? And I can send that. And now him and I are having a conversation inside of our respective areas, wherever we are in the world, which is really, really powerful stuff. Exactly, right? How's the lighting? Not very good because I only have one light with me today, but we're trying our best. So that's an interesting thing. Now there's one more way we can do this. So let's share the screen with Dominic, and we can look at one more way to transmit. So I'm going to shoot a third take. So this is take three, and then we're going to go 3, 2, 1, and then I'm going to cut picture and sound. And so now we'll start to see a take 3 process appear. So if I go into there, it's uploading the file right now. You can see the transmission happen. It's done. You saw it transfer there. Audio's done. So now we can look at Dominic's screen, and Dominic can click on the Frame.io panel. And so this is a direct integration from Frame.io into Final Cut Pro. This exists in Resolve, and it exists in Premiere Pro. So you can use all of these tools to be able to do that. So once Dominic, maybe hit back and hit refresh. I'm not sure, Dominic. There you go. I don't know if there's a refresh button in the, try that. But Dominic will be able to access everything inside of our work. So you could grab the video files, that's fine, whatever you want. And you could just bring them in to Final Cut directly from Frame.io. So this is a direct delivery from Frame.io into Final Cut without having to go to the web or anywhere else. And you can bring that right inside Final Cut Pro timeline, and there you go. So he's able to just drag and drop that in, and now he's basically editing with these assets. You can deliver assets right into editors, and the editors don't have to go anywhere else or get an email or a text message or something silly like that. So you really change the game when you're delivering directly to editorial, because editorial can now be engaged dynamically because they have a portal into Frame.io. So this is a very, very different way of working, because normally we're used to waiting for notifications of some kind and an email and a link and a transmission. And you can actually download each take one at a time if they were shooting that way, or each scene, one scene at a time, or each day at the end of the day, whatever you wanted. You are now in charge of the rhythm, not waiting for a hard drive to show up. That's the point. It's your rhythm to decide how often you want takes and whether or not you're going to start editing these, or you're going to start just watching them, QCing them, transcribing them, relinking them, transferring them, sharing them with VFX or wardrobe or hair and makeup. Anyone can now start collaborating because you're on a secure platform that's centralized, and you have the keys to who's allowed to see what asset.
That's awesome. So when you're in Final Cut now, if I wanted to do the same thing the guy was doing and be able to, make notes on this, is it through the panel in the corner where you can click and make notes?
That's right. If you go to the second take and double click on that take, you can make that panel a little bigger, but you'll see everything Guy and I are doing inside of the Frame.io Final Cut. It's called the Final Cut extension. So there you can see everything, and now you can participate. So what editors in Final Cut do is they make that panel long and tall, and they sort of put it on the side, and they stretch Final Cut. They shrink Final Cut a tiny bit, right?
Got it.
Wherever you want to put it is fine. But yeah, you can go through and you can now interact with us, and your metadata, our metadata, it's all dynamically linked together. So that the editor, so when I work with an editor, Vince Michelli, what basically Vince and I do is he's in Final Cut all the time, and I'm making notes and he's checking them off. If you look in the right, you can actually check off notes and things like that. So there's right. See, there you go. You can check it off. So if you go through your edit list, you actually check off what you're doing. So he can actually see where I am in the timeline. It's called presence, which will show you where I'm at in the time. He can see when I'm reviewing his work, and then he can just check it off as I go. So it's a totally new experience for editors because you're working sort of in tandem. Everybody's thinking about how do I get live feeds? Live feed is sort of a primitive way to work if you think about it, because you don't necessarily need a live feed. If you can watch what's happening, an editor can get your notes right then and there. That's almost as good as a live feed. Plus, it can happen when you're not synchronous. The live feed only works when you're synchronous. If you're asynchronous, then a live feed is no good, obviously. So what we do at Frame.io is you can be looking at this an hour later, the editor still gets everything quickly, or you can look at it a day later. The editor gets everything quickly, and you're not using emails and texts and bullet points and Google Sheets and stuff. All that is done. This is the way to do it, and you just saw it done. I mean, we're 1,000 miles apart from each other right now, and we're delivering assets that quickly. And this would work anywhere in the world.
That's great. And then I had a question too, just going through this with the time code, right? Like if you're in file naming, is it syncing just based on time code alone? It doesn't matter what your metadata is, your track name for your audio, like scene 15, take 20, the camera raw file is a something something. None of that matters. If you get off on a take or something, it's just about the time code. So as long as everything is synced up and you've got some jam boxes, or you're trying your best to keep it synced the whole way through, it's going to use time code specifically and only to do that process, correct?
That's correct, because that's the only way we can fully automate it, is to rely on time code. And so a cable like this is one that this plugs into the 888. This plugs into the back of my Red camera. And as long as I have this, I'm synced. And then in my slate, I've got my slate input and my output from the 888. So these two cables are basically what I need to make sure that I'm in sync, whether or not I have a locket box. It helps to have a locket box, obviously. So if you can invest in that, go for it. But if you can't, that is a simple solution for the automatic syncing to take place. It also helps you in editorial. Editorial has other syncing solutions, right? We are not saying that you should actually use our synced files to edit with. That's probably not ideal, because timecode can drift, or you might use our synced files as a scratch track and an editor wants to have separate files. Or some systems like Final Cut, for example, they are really bad and struggle with relinking clips if the audio configuration changes. You ever notice that?
Got it.
So what is ideal and what is proper for dealing with integrations with editors is you basically want to bring the video and the audio in separately. And that's something you could have done, Dominic, right? Because you have audio and video, we keep those separate. So you could pull them in and then sync them up by timecode or by, pluralize or whatever you want, right? And that way your video asset could be replaced with a raw file later, and your audio isn't affected because your audio is the hero audio, right?
Right.
That's a safer way to work. So then what's AV Sync for? AV Sync allows your iPhone experience to have an instantly synced file so that people can listen to it right away. That's what AV Sync really helps, is if you're in the field and you just need to listen and watch right now, we've already sunk the sound. So you don't have to ask camera crews to plug mics into their cameras, because generally that's not ideal. Or in some cases, it's kind of downright impossible. If you've got a dual system sound system, this actually works better. And for a lot of people, that's a big eye opener.
Wow, that's amazing. We got a couple of questions coming up in the Q&A, so I wanted to jump to the first one. One is Maurice Morales is asking, what phone clamp is that?
That's a great, I love it. This is made iShot Pro. Letter I, Shot Pro. So that's the actual clamp. And then I just have a Noga arm attached to it. So iShot Pro.
Nice. Next one's coming in from...
I could help with that one. That was the easiest question
We'll throw you a softball first, and then we're just warming you up.
Fair enough.
Next one's coming in from Hunter. Will this work with other Teradek wireless transmission setups? And if so, what's the benefit of using the XT?
So the XT is the only model that will transmit the metadata for record trigger and file name and time code. The non-XT bolts just transmit video. So the cube would not know when to record. Remember, the cube's rolling when the camera rolls, and it's cutting when the camera cuts, right? So we need the XT models in order to transmit that metadata. All the Bolt 4K models going forward, all of them, they support this. So I think going forward, you're totally fine. If you're going backwards, Bolt XTs. 500s work, 2000s work, 3000s work, but they have to be the XT model for the metadata.
Awesome. We got another one from anonymous attendee. I think I know them. From an agency's producer's POV, or really any producer's POV, if we have a frame account, what do I need to keep in mind for workflow between hired crew on set and a hired editor in a remote bay? Do I need to be asking audio and camera department heads if they have the right hardware for C2C and are familiar using it during the bidding process? And then what access would I need to give our editors?
That's a great question, Anonymous. Very, very good question. So the answer is the cubes themselves are very low cost items. They retail about $2,000. So in a rental space, that's going to be, you know, maybe $100 to $200 a week for an item like that. So in terms of a rental package, a cube is pretty inexpensive. An 888 is Sound Device's newest field recording series. So the good and bad side of Sound Devices is that their stuff lasts forever. So the 788s work great. So people don't want to replace them because they're so great. That's good if you own a Sound Device 788, but it's bad for wanting to upgrade because the 788 will never have this feature. So the sound recorder has to own an 888 or a Scorpio today. Those are the models supported today. And those are required for audio to go to cloud. If they don't have audio to cloud, you could always run a scratch track to the cube. So let's say they have a 788 or a Zaxcom or an Aton or a Zoom. If they just provide a wireless signal, you could plug in this 1/8" jack into the back of the cube, because the cube has an audio input, and you could just capture a stereo mix down from the sound mixer into the cube, and at least your audio is automatically synced in the cube proxies, and you have to find a way to get your video to the editor. But that would be a solution if they didn't have an 888, you don't have MOS clips. And then the last part you mentioned in your question was, I think it was the first thing you said in your question, was how do you make sure you have security with people that have frame accounts or don't have accounts? Let me be clear. An on-set personnel does not need a Frame.io account. They do not need it to authenticate. They just need to read the 6-digit code. The admin automatically has a Cloud Devices account. We charge $0 for this technology. Your Frame.io account, as long as it's a paid account, and there's 3 levels of paid account, there's Pro, Team, and Enterprise. All of those accounts have Cloud Devices when it releases. And the release is coming very soon, wink, wink, very soon, public release. We're in beta right now. The release is really, 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 really soon. So if you have a Frame.io paid account, you can get Cloud Devices, and these devices will automatically publish to your account as long as you have those appliances. And then the appliance manufacturers, Teradek and Sound Devices, are not charging for a firmware upgrade. So Camera to Cloud, in a way, is free. If you have a Sound Devices or a Teradek Cube or a Frame.io account, you have it, and you won't charge to have this feature. Our goal is to be democratizing. We don't want to make this an exclusive solution, because everyone needs this. Let's face it, everyone needs this, not just top people. Everybody in between needs this. TikTokers could make use of this. This will be better for everybody. And so we want to support that by not making it an expensive barrier to entry. You need to have the hardware. You got to have an SDI camera. You have to have a cube and a Sound Devices. But you need that anyway, right? Once you have those things, you're good to go with Camera to Cloud.
And question with the multicam. So if I had a 3-camera shoot and all of those came up, when Dominic took those into his Final Cut and he made a multi-clip, all that time code would just sync up, and I can cut just as I normally would in Final Cut, and then relink just like normal, huh? And then if a producer wanted to look at that timeline and review, like right now, I just see the same 3 clips. Where do I see his edit?
Well, he would have to publish that out. So if we go back, we could show Dominic real quick. This will be a little funky, but if we go to Dominic real quick, yep. On your screen, I'll just talk you through a very, 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 very brief demo here. But let's say he has an edit of Camera to Cloud clips. If you click in the Final Cut file menu, okay, you dragged everything in there. If you go to the file menu, there you go.
Yep.
And then you go to share. There is a share via Frame.io. And you can do Frame.io source or Frame.io H.264. So it'll either take a big shot, a big high quality file and make a 264, or you could send it up as it is. And when it does that, it'll launch and upload directly back into Frame.io. So click on that, and then it'll launch the Frame.io panel, and you could just hit next for now. You got a file right there, and it'll start uploading your file directly to Frame.io, and you choose the project you want to put it in. So if you put it in C2C, click on that.
Yep.
There you go. Hit upload. Now, Dominic, you're going to get his cut. It's going to publish that cut that he made back into C2C. So it's uploading it right now. So we could switch to Dominic's screen, and Dominic, you should actually see. I'm sorry, we should switch to Guy's screen.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go ahead and stop his, and then I'll go ahead and share my screen. And so I'm here, and go to the 325 folder.
I think it might be below all that stuff. Did he put it? I think he put it at the root. Scroll down, or yeah, back up to C2C. Back up one directory. Click on the C2C.
One directory. Here we go.
There you go. There's the file. So he just delivered that to you from Final Cut. So we just went freaking round trip. Right?
This is so cool.
And
now
so
if I leave a note in here, he's going to get it in his Final Cut timeline?
He will get it in the Final Cut timeline. Yes.
Is a note. And then if I hit send.
So we can switch back to Dominic now.
Okay, I'll stop my share and Dominic can pick his up.
Okay.
And now Dominic, in the Premiere, in the panel, go back in your panel.
Yep.
Go back one more, double click, or one more, sorry, one more. Double click in there. And now that you're on Untitled Project, click on that. That becomes your player window. Now watch this. I'm going to show you guys something really cool. There's a little button on the left of that panel. That guy right there. Okay, click that. Now scrub in the Frame.io panel, and it will scrub your actual Final Cut timeline. Do you see that?
Oh, that's crazy.
Whoa.
So you're driving that. And if you, Dominic, get in that clip again on your side, I'm sorry, if you Guy get in that clip again, it'll actually show Dominic where you are. Maybe because you have a free account, it won't. I'm not really sure about that. Maybe
I'm at 10 seconds into the clip.
If I go in here, does it show me on, it doesn't show me. Maybe because you both have free accounts, it doesn't show that, but it can often show where we physically are in watching your cut. And of course I can say Michael's here too, and I can send a note, and now you'll get a new comment inside of Final Cut. So you'll be getting all of the notations transmitted. So it's pretty nifty to be able to see all that transmit. So this is another level of editing. Now we turned into an editing demo, but that's fun too, because it's all connected, right?
I think a lot of the folks that are watching haven't had the chance to experience. So I'm glad that we were able to walk it through on that level too. And the same thing would happen in Premiere and Avid as well, right? Same thing.
Avid does not have a cloud devices integration because Avid doesn't really have an API that they publish to get into their program. So if you're an Avid user, call Avid, please. Write Avid. Let them know that you want Frame.io in their tool, because it's really not up to us. We are in Frame.io. I'm sorry. We are in Final Cut, Premiere, and Resolve, and 1,000 other apps. We have 1,000 direct integrations of Frame.io. The main ones for probably people listening here are Teradek, Sound Devices, Final Cut, Premiere, Resolve. But we want to be in Avid. But we can't. So in Avid, we have a solution where you actually go into Frame.io and you download the comments as location markers, and you have to manually import location markers into Avid via XML. So you can get comments into Avid, but they're not dynamic like you're seeing here. It's a manual process.
That's cool. I have a couple questions too, just going back on the multicam and sound. If you are doing sound and you have an 888, easy peasy, it's up and done. If you're doing sound on set, well, let's say you have an 888, you don't need to have Frame.io. You just need the producer or whoever has the account to be able to publish those files. So if they say, hey, we're doing this workflow, You just got to go into your mixer and authenticate, pair the devices, and you're like away and running, right? So you don't need to own anything other than the mixer. Now, if you're on set and let's say you have a Zaxcom or something, you're recording at the end of the day, if the rest of the video files are going to Frame.io, do you need to just give your audio raw to DIT and they push over the Teradek to Frame.io from there? It just you wouldn't be able to have AV sync. You would still get an audio and a video file, but they would have to manually upload to Frame.io those audio files.
That's correct, except you wouldn't need to use the cube for that. If you were running a Zaxcom and it's a great question. If you had a Zaxcom and you had your files at the end of the day, so your files are going to be on something like this, yep, right, at the end of the day. So you would just give this to the DIT, and the DIT just can, if they're still in internet, they just drag this into the Frame.io platform.
Oh.
You just drag and drop, and it just publishes into the folder you want. If you do that in the cloud devices folder, this is a secret. If you put that in the cloud devices folder, it might sync it automatically, right? So
right.
That is sort of a sloppy AV sync, and it's certainly a slow AV sync because it's happening hours later, but it's synced.
That's really cool. Well, that's good to know. And then in terms of the multicam situation, you would need each camera would need its own device. So each camera would need its own cube to be able to upload to Frame.io. If you're doing that, is the bandwidth, so let's say you're running on Wi-Fi, each one of those cubes would need to be on that Wi-Fi network, correct?
Yeah.
And then if you're multicamming, you cut camera, you've got 3 streams all going up through the same from 3 cameras. I mean, does it still work very well? Should you set your bandwidth down a little bit to allow for multiple cameras going up through kind of the same Wi-Fi or LTE?
Right. Great question. So here's my advice, and this is just my perspective, so try and test yourself. Pick a bit rate that you think everyone's going to be comfortable with, so you don't have to worry about throttling bit rates, because you want this to be set it and forget it. Every shoot that I've been doing for the last year, this is how I work. I never think about it when I get it going, because I don't want to think about it. I got other problems, right? So what you want to do is pick a bit rate that you think works. Again, for me, 3.5 is the butter zone where I don't have problems with quality. And I really find upload speeds seem to be okay, even in multi-camera situations, okay? But if you need a higher quality file, you need to do some tests. And if you can take a lower quality file, it only gets better. Let's say you have 10 megabits up, okay? That's not a crazy situation. If you have 10 megabits up and you set your files to 3 megabits, well, you're basically going to get 3 times faster than real time. If you have 2 cameras, that's going to be 6 megabits. So it's still about 40 to 50% faster than real time. So if you had a 5-minute take on 2 cameras at 3 megabits each, it would take fewer than 3 minutes for that to get up. If you have better than 10 megabits, life just gets better, right? So here's what I've done. I started recording this file when you started asking that question. So it's been going for about a minute or 2. So what I'm going to do is zoom into the cube here. You can see the cube is rolling because it says record. And now I'm going to hit cut. And now watch what happens on the cube. I'm going to go to ACAM here, and you can see the cube's going to transition to upload, and now it's pushing a 2-minute file while we're Zoom streaming. I can go in here and I can see the asset uploading right now, and now it's 50%. It says the file name, so I can see the name of the file, I can see the percentage, and I just shot a 2-minute take. I don't have full bandwidth of my network because I'm on Zoom right now, and so you can see there the file finished uploading, and now the file is drawing its thumbnail, and it'll be done any second. And so that's basically how long it takes in sort of an average network. I have 10 megabits
that was
up.
3 megabit was what this one was set at?
That's correct. That was a 3 megabit file. And it looks like it'll be done any second. But that was 3 megs. And if I did 2 cameras, it would take a little bit longer. On a 20 megabit connection, A 20 meg up, which is a healthy upload, an hour-long file will take about 5 minutes to upload at 3 megabits. So we have people doing that a lot. So I can click on this file. What's going on? There we are. So I can watch it, right? So that file was 2 minutes long, exactly 1:59. So that was 2 minutes long, and we did not wait 2 minutes to get that file. So that's kind of an example of how you could do that. Multicam, it would be fine. Now remember, it was uploading. You saw the percentage of upload. If you have a weaker network, it just goes up slower. That's all. We've all attached files to emails, and you have to just wait for the bar. The good news about Frame.io, unlike Gmail, is when you're attaching a file in Gmail, you can't type the email. You have to wait. In the Cube, you can roll the next take while it's uploading the last take. So it's a background process. So you don't really notice it. And for those of you that do narrative style production, you might have a 12-hour shoot day, but you're only shooting about 2 hours worth of material. That means there's 10 hours of upload time that the cameras aren't rolling. And that's all upload time, even on the worst network in the world. The Cube can be uploading in the background and you're still getting stuff faster.
Right. And worst case scenario, maybe you have to wait till the end of the day. And like you said, you go back to your hotel, send it all up. Still faster than, I mean, that's same day delivery. That's not next day with a hard drive, ingesting. It's all there same day, which is still fantastic. With triggering the Cube, with the XT, you can do it wirelessly with trigger, but let's say you're using something like a C300 Mark III, and you're not using you're just plugged in right on camera. Will that just trigger over SDI if you don't have an XT as a wireless transmitter to it? I mean, you can mount the Cube directly on camera, correct, and then just pigtail right into it.
Absolutely, you can do that, and I want to share my screen and show you this. This is a supported cameras list, and what you can see here is the top section, the camera companies, Red, Komodo, DXL, Alexa, Amira. Those all demonstrate that they have built-in record triggers. The trigger is on by default. They provide the file name, the time code is good, and the clip name is good. But if you look at the bottom, Sony, Canon, Panasonic, one of the problems, and again, write your Sony, Panasonic, and Canon representatives, they do not have trigger on by default, which is sort of, I think, a flaw left over from a broadcast world. You have to go into the menus and turn the trigger on. That should be default behavior. That should just be how the camera sits natively. But unfortunately, you have to go to a menu, find camera triggers, and turn it on. Once it's on, it stays on, but you have to do that manually. Then the second thing is it says clip name. Right now, the clip name is no. There is not an exact standard for how cameras put clip name in their SDI streams. So Teradek is going through each camera manufacturer, and they are having to re-engineer a way to get the clip name because different camera companies use different naming properties inside their Hank metadata. So in this case, you do not get clip name right now from Sony, Canon, or Panasonic. So you would get, your file name would be like the time code. That would be like the file name or the time of day or date. But that, again, if you're a big Canon user, a big Panasonic user, a big Sony user, write to Teradek. They want to hear from you, and they just want to know what cameras you're using so that they can support that. So there's a little bit of Teradek you got to let them know, and then there's a little bit of the actual manufacturer. Tell them to put record triggers as a default behavior. If you're shooting Red, DXL, or Alexa, everything works out of the box.
Great. And then, with something like, let's say, are these all of the supported cameras? Because there's obviously quite a few that aren't on this list, like the new C500 Mark II. Would that still work, or are we still waiting on some support for that out of the SDI?
We haven't been able to test every camera under the sun. Okay. And so this is the list that we are able to provide with quantifiable results. But a lot of these companies use the same firmware in different cameras that are in the same family. So if a C300 Mark II works A C300, a C500 may also work, and it should work. But we just haven't had a chance to test it. So we don't want to put something on our website we haven't actually tested ourselves, but you can test it. And so that this list will always get bigger. But given we're in version 1, I mean, today we're in beta. When this was recorded, we're in beta. By the time most people watch this, it will be out of beta. This list will only get thicker and thicker.
Awesome. That's great news.
But it's basically just time code. It's just when it sees time code, it can begin recording, essentially. So as long as that's enabled, right? It's just, is that correct? Because I have like some decks where I have it set up that way, where it just, as soon as it sees time code moving, it can begin recording. Is that
well,
like my HyperDeck AK?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, because the time code in an external jam situation is on time of day. So it's always feeding time, right? And so we're actually looking for a specific GPI trigger kind of when run happens and cut happens, run and stop. So that is actually a different signal inside the SDI stream where time code is a different signal. So we're always getting time code and we're only sometimes getting record stop commands.
Gotcha. This is going to be a far-fetched one, but if somebody's in a different city and you want to jam sync time of day frame accurately, how do you sync up to people that are already, you know, across the country with time of day? Is there an NTP, like some kind of internet place where you can like plug in and everybody syncs up to frame accuracy?
If you were using Tentacle syncs and you were running them off your phone, theoretically, when you jam them off your phone, it's all on the same network clock. So it would probably be fairly close. I don't know if it'd be accurate, but it'd be hard to jam two different things in the exact same frame from a ways unless you had a clock that was the same in both places.
Yeah, not impossible, but most of the time, thankfully, audio and picture are in the same building. But if they weren't, yeah, you'd have to use a geosync based electronic clock so that you could have absolute time and then you could get it pretty close. It'd be close. Yeah, that's a good one. Any other questions?
I guess my bigger question that everybody will want to know is Wi-Fi and LTE. Those are the two options for running, right?
Yes.
Obviously, we all know what Wi-Fi is. Sometimes it's available, sometimes it's not. LTE, also sometimes available, sometimes not. If you're running LTE, you do need a hotspot that you provide yourself on set, correct? So you're not just running off of like the Verizon network of whatever. You have to have a box that is providing essentially its own semi-Wi-Fi network based off of 4G for everything to connect to, correct?
That's right. And I thought I had another, yes, here. So actually, let me unshare my screen to show you three things. So these are three modems. This is, I showed you earlier, the Netgear Nighthawk. I like that one. Here I've got a really inexpensive T-Mobile one. This one works okay. And then here I've got a MiFi from Verizon. And what I like about the MiFi and the Netgear is they have full-size Ethernet. But I have a problem with the MiFi is that the Ethernet working requires you to have it plugged in for the battery, even though this has a battery, where the Nighthawk has its own battery. It'll last for like 6-7 hours without charging, and you can have the Ethernet plugged in without a battery, just running off its own battery. I like that. This also has a battery. These are great if they're really close. This is great if it's really close to the cube. But the other thing is, this is a USB micro here, and you could plug USB micro directly into the cube. So you could actually take the cube and you could plug it in because there's USB on the cube. And this is a network connection port, right? So this is kind of a nice way you could consider working. You could actually put the hotspot right on the cube wherever it goes. That's pretty nifty. Or you could connect these over Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi to the cube or over Ethernet to the cube. Now, I want to share my screen because you're making up a great point. And the point is talking about the subject of set networking. And I just want to give a little encouragement. If someone out there wants a new job, if you're looking for a new job and you want to get on the set and make a big impact, this is going to be sort of like DIT's 15 years ago. If you knew DITs 15 years ago that jumped on it and got really good at it quickly, they made a killing and they became very critical to the success of digital cinema. Set networking is going to be the same. If you're really good at set networking, you're going to be valuable. And so if you're looking for value in the market, learn this stuff. Now, this is a company called Sclera Digital. The owner is a guy named Willis Chung. He's so smart. He was a 600 DIT, really smart guy. And he basically has kind of jumped on this process. And he's an expert in on-set networking with industrial level hotspots. So if I zoom into this, if you look at this, this is really nifty. This is a hotspot that's gold mounted. So it's actually a gold mount power so that you can run a camera battery on this. The camera battery will last probably 6-7 hours on this. Here's the cube. There's a bolt on this. So it's receiving the signal from the bolt. It's sending the bolt to the cube. It's encoding it. And then it's hardlined. And then this is called the bazooka antenna. And this is going to have a massive increase in dB to get a higher quality signal. So you don't want to use, we all use our cell phones as like a speed test, but your cell phone antenna is not that exceptional. It's okay, but calls drop and you have problems. But there's nothing wrong with the modem in the cell phone. What's wrong is the level of antenna. And to make these phones look beautiful, they don't have external antennas anymore because they're ugly. So you can actually have a way better signal if you had a better antenna. Shocker, right? So that's what this essentially does, is it's a super antenna. Here's another example that Willis has. Here we have the modem gold mount built into the camera. So this is his modem. Here's his cube, and he's got the cube plugged in Ethernet. You can kind of see that. And then that Ethernet goes into the modem. And now every time the camera records, it's capturing that proxy in the cube, and then it's transmitting it to Frame.io wherever this camera runs. So it's a totally tether-free system. Wherever that operator goes, he or she is shooting right to the cloud. So that's a major cool workflow there. And then I have one more over here. This is called the Mushroom. This is a antenna that is got the modem is down here. It's gold mount powered, so it's all battery powered. There's a baby pin on the bottom, so you can just run this on a C-stand. And this is sort of in between that bazooka antenna and just a and something small like this with just little baby pin antennas. This would sort of be in the middle, the Mushroom's in the middle. And this would create a really high quality network on the set. The benefit of these, though, is that these professional grade routers have quad bonding. So you can have a SIM card from AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile, and it can aggregate them together. So you're always getting all the potential upload strength you want. Yesterday, I was in a park in LA, and we had 30 to 40 megabits up in the park with that Mushroom. 30 to 40 megabits up means we were sending 1 gigabyte every 3 minutes. Think about how big that is. A gigabyte every 3 minutes. That's like ProRes size files, right? So these little proxies we're shooting, a minute proxy on a 40 megabit upload is going to go up in, 10 seconds, 8 seconds, something like that. So it's really, really fast. If you have a solution like that. That was using the Mushroom. And so getting into this set networking technology is going to be a big business, and it's going to be really, really solid. One of the things you'll be able to meet Willis, because on our website, when we launch Camera to Cloud, which is very soon again, on our website, if you're watching this after its launch, you can go to frame.io/C2C, letter C, number 2, letter C, C2C. And when you go on the website, there's a training series. It's called Camera to Cloud Training Series. And in it, there's a whole section about on-set networking. And we go through all the pros and cons. We go the difference between, strength and quality, right? High strength, low quality. What's that about, right? You ever been at like a baseball game? You have really good signal strength, but the quality's low because there's too many users. So it's not necessarily about how many bars you have. If you have 1 bar, but it's great quality, that can be better than 5 bars that is low quality, right? So these are things that we have to learn about. And then learning about different SIM plans. Do you buy a plan from Verizon? Is that a good idea? Or should you get a plan from an industrial world? You know, I use Telna. Telna is a great solution to get really good plans, and you can pay by the gigabyte. I believe it's $6 a gig at the time of this recording. It's $6 a gig. So you just pay as you go, and you get a bill for $6 a gig, and it'll never throttle you down. But if you go to the Verizon store and get a SIM card, after 20 to 30 gigs, they throttle it down. So this is the information about different plans that you want to use. Otherwise, you'll end up buying like 10 of these to keep the system going. And maybe that's not a good investment in the long run. These are all things that I don't have all the answers, but I'm learning a little bit every day. And I go around shooting and we test different things, and that's how we learn. And if you were doing this 15 years ago when digital cinema was born, it was kind of Wild West, right? That's kind of the fun part of it, but we have to discover together. And so this is an opportunity to do exactly that.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So
I'm blown away.
yeah.
You got another one, Dominic?
I mean,
You got one more question?
Just for everybody out there. I mean, so like, let's say I'm a producer and I want to do a frame IO workflow on set. We're single cam. We're going to need a camera that is capable of, you know, if we want all the metadata, one of those cameras, we need a Teradek cube. If we want to go at least hardlined in, if we want to go wireless, we would need an XT. We would need Wi-Fi at our location, or if there's not Wi-Fi available, we would need a MiFi box of some sort to be able to join and send stuff up. And if your sound is there, it's not needed. That can go up via DIT, but if you have an 888 or a Scorpio, you can send that up to the same account as well. Those are the main things, right? The rest is the post side of getting everybody on the software side, but those are the hardware minimum requirements, right? To be able to like integrate a Frame.io workflow that starts on set and goes all the way through post, correct?
Yeah, in fact, the minimum is that if you have a phone, it can be a hotspot and a cube, and you can plug your phone into the USB here, and you could turn that into, that's the minimum right there. Oh, and plus you need a you need an SD card, right, to record. So this is actually the minimum, but your performance could be compromised if you're just relying on your cell phone and hotspot. You've been in an airport and been like, so, you know, is that good enough for your video? It's up to you to decide that. I wanted to show you one more thing. I'm not going far. I just thought of this. This is another trick, since we're having a networking discussion. Here's another trick here. If you have a hotspot like the MiFi or the Nighthawk, you could plug this into an Amplify. Now, an Amplify, I'm sorry it's in the box, but I just packed it up. The Amplify gives you a center point here, and it automatically creates mesh points. So these guys are mesh points that are Edison plugs. You could just plug these into the wall.
Got it.
And you now have a large mesh, and then you're just putting the modem plugged into this. And so this is where the internet goes into. Then it distributes it to like a 5,000 square foot zone, right? So that's a really quick, easy way to do it. And Amplify, the company that makes this is Ubiquiti. Ubiquiti does a great job of making this an easy setup. So that's another combination. Again, how do we discover this stuff? Urban Olson's at DIT, he introduced me to that stuff. It's just going through and talking to people and like discovering these little things. And why I like that, he's like, you're going to love this because of the mesh points. It's automatic mesh points. If you've ever had to make mesh points without it being automatic, it's a nightmare. And you don't have time on the set to do that. But Ubiquiti made it kind of out of the box. So now you take your Netgear Nighthawk, plug it in Ubiquiti, and now you have a pretty big network with pretty stuff you can get at Best Buy. But the mushroom and things like that I showed you in the bazooka from Sclera Digital, that's where you can go a little bit further. And I think I have one last slide here that'll show you. This picture shows you, so the mushroom, you can get PepWave or PepLink. That should say PepLink is another solution. PepLink is the master company that makes a lot of these high quality antennas. Then Amplify would be the medium. And then the smallest would be these like USB hotspots that you use like at airports and stuff like that we've all used. So this is sort of like a big, medium, and small solution, and you can decide where your price pain tolerance is, and you can start with something small and work your way up to something bigger. Obviously, if you have better antennas, you're going to have better upload speeds and larger network coverage. None of this works without the internet. I literally had someone say, well, how does it work if you don't have the internet? It doesn't. Okay. So you have to have the internet. But it's getting harder and harder to do anything on earth without the internet. I think we can all agree. And that's actually to the advantage of the telecommunications industry, because they want to sell us internet. So the more we use it, the better they make it, the more towers they install. Now we have satellite internet coming, right? If you sign up for the beta for Starlink and things like that, satellite internet is going to be very popular. It's going to be very big. And that's another option where you don't even need any of these things, because you're just going to have a satellite signal and you'll just connect the cube to the satellite signal. Or in the future, you'll connect your camera to the satellite signal and your camera's just online. Not only can you get the footage out of it, but you can remotely do everything to that camera from the internet. So you don't need to run cables for just controlling iris and focus and zoom and boom and settings. Like it's just all going to be virtual through TCP/IP, and that's where we're going to be in 2031.
That's wild to think about, but super cool.
So exciting. Well, thank you, Michael, for coming and visiting with us. I'd like to thank Dominic for setting this up and creating the group in the Northwest Production Hub and being our local gear place. So he rents them and I sell them. So we have the 888 in stock. We have the 655 in stock. Hopefully we can make a deal with Dominic and get those in there so other people can borrow them and start trying this out. So Michael, soon, how quick?
Of cubes coming in our way as well. So hopefully we'll be able to get all this stuff for people on set, which would be great.
Awesome. And was there any other questions, or we tear through all of them? Looks like all of the ones from the Zoom chat are gone, and I think that we got all yours as well, Dominic. So again, Michael, that was fantastic. I'm excited. I mean, I know that I'm going to start to go to sleep at night, and something's going to hit me at like 2 o'clock in the morning with what I can do with this and new ideas. So I just love how you're just so cutting edge and moving the industry forward. So thank you for being that guy, you and Emery both. I mean, it's fantastic what you guys are doing for the industry.
It takes a village. We have an amazing engineering team, and it takes a village. And it's not just the Frame.io story. It's also truly the story of the community, because a lot of the stuff that we're figuring out and thinking of comes from the community. How do you think of like pause devices because of sensitive material? That's the community telling us, well, I want everything to go to the cloud except when I don't, right? Oh yeah, right? Like these are the things that the community using it can help steer how it should work. Everybody that's bought anything digital knows version 2 is better than version 1. How did it get there? Community feedback. So we are available and open. In fact, there's going to be an email. I think it's C2C@frame.io. You'll be able to email us because we really want that feedback. That'll all be on our website, frame.io/C2C, because we want to make this better and we need you to help us accomplish that.
Exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you once again, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dom. And we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Vera, if you want to go ahead and end the webinar, thanks again. And we'll see you guys on the other side.